we had given different paper assignments. They had to write an essay about something. I'm eating lunch with this other art history teacher, and she's going over the paper. She's reading out little sentences here and there. And she starts reading this sentence, and we're sort of, I'm sorry to say, laughing at it because it was a little bit silly. And so afterwards, that evening, I go home and I'm grading papers, and I start reading this paper, and it sounds exactly like what that teacher had read to me during the lunch break. And so I emailed her and I said, this sounds really similar. Can you please send me the paper so I can look at it verbatim, the exact same paper? And so, of course, we went to the student, and it turned out actually that the two students were roommates. And one of the students, my student, had actually gone into her roommate's computer, stolen the file, and then passed it into my class. Of course, thinking that it'd be fine because they were in two different art history classes with two different teachers. And yeah, they got totally nailed. And the terrible part is that they were friends, and the girl who had her paper stolen had no idea. She didn't even know that her roommate had stolen it. Kat, what are people thinking?
Oh my gosh. It like the planets aligned for you to catch her doing that.
We would never have known. But the thing is, with the internet now, I think what's interesting is that, first of all, it's easier to plagiarize because people just have access to way more content with a couple of clicks, but it's also easier to get caught. Do you think that's true?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it is a lot easier to plagiarize, but it is also extremely easy to get caught. I mean, Google Image now has a reverse image search where you can just put in an image and see if that image already exists, or maybe a form of that image exists on the internet. And I feel like that kind of tool is very helpful for catching copycats.
And also, there's some images, a lot of people see them. Like, for example, there is an artwork from a long time ago that we featured in one of our streams. This is like 5 years ago. And somebody else emailed me the next day. They said, that looks exactly like this drawing on Pinterest. And yeah, it was basically verbatim. And so what we're finding now is when stuff gets posted and it has been copied, there's a lot of people out there willing to call people out. And I do think for the most part, that's a good thing, but it's really become difficult for a lot of teachers. Now, Kat, you have not taught for 15 years like me, so I'm guessing you do not have as many stories up your sleeve as I do, but you have a story from when you were a student in a class and it was another student who plagiarized. So tell us about that story.
Right. So this is probably the most intense case of plagiarism I'd ever seen in real life. Of course, I've seen stories and I've experienced stories here and there, but this was the biggest one for me. So it was this one student in our class, and he brings in 3 projects that have been plagiarized. Well, technically, the first assignment was 2 projects, and he plagiarized both of them. So the first one he plagiarized was Chris Ware building stories. He literally took one of Chris Ware's images and printed it out super big and erased all the text and submitted it as his own. And people were like, huh, this seems familiar, but like people in our class were not very familiar with Chris Ware. So we weren't totally sure that he had copied it. It just seemed abnormally too good for a student of his caliber to have made something like this. So we were suspicious. Now, the second project he turned in, we all knew what it was. It was Uzumaki by Junji Ito. And this one was kind of interesting. He did a different method of plagiarizing. He took different panels from Uzumaki and then sort of put them all together into one page to create a quote unquote new comic. But he didn't bother to like change the artwork or anything. He just took panels and then rearranged them on the page and then submitted them as his own. And everyone was like, that is horror mangaka Junji Ito. You did not draw this. And actually, the teacher was like, oh, you know what? He could have maybe just been inspired by it. Like, I don't know if it's straight up plagiarism. And then somebody pulled up the image on their phone to show the teacher. And the teacher was like, oh yeah, that's copied. That's definitely copied. And basically, the kid got a slap on the wrist for this incident. It wasn't, I mean, nobody went to administration or anything about it because we were like, okay, this is a one-time thing. We don't really know you that well. Don't do it again. But the next time he brings in an assignment, it's another comic page. And people weren't really aware of Naoki Urasawa in the classroom, but I thought that the page he brought in was eerily familiar. And so I later on go and look, I was like, I think it might be Neon Genesis Evangelion. It could be something else. And then I realized, oh, it's Pluto by Naoki Urasawa. It's just this one page from this huge comic that he copied verbatim. But what's different about this kind of plagiarism was that he did draw it by himself. But like, it was basically the same page with the same composition, the same kind of drawings, but worse. Like, he made the drawings worse because he drew them himself. And this was a time when the professor filed a complaint to the administration because by now he had copied 3 artists, and that's strike 3. Like, you're gone. You can't do that again. And he didn't come back to class since then.
I feel like that's a lot of thought and effort going into multiple ways of plagiarizing. Like, what did your time and effort be better invested in making something? Like, I don't understand that. That's just really strange to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cerulean is saying, how many times does something like this happen and it's not found out? What do you think, Kat? Do you think that you can estimate this, or do you really have no idea?
I mean, you really have no idea, because if you don't get caught, you won't get caught. And I mean, that's sort of what's nice, I guess, when people plagiarize, they're like, oh, if I don't get caught, like, I'll pass the assignment, it's fine, and blah, 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 blah. But okay, nowadays it's really easy to get caught. And second of all, why waste your time doing that? Like, why be in a class you paid for where you're trying to learn stuff and produce work and just copy stuff? That's such an enormous waste of time, and I just don't understand it. So, Cerulean, I don't know how many times it happens. It probably happens plenty of times, but I don't know. Like, a lot of cases that are caught, the word spreads. Like, people will start to hear that you've done this thing. If you get caught once, it's pretty much over. What about you?
I mean, there's definitely different degrees of getting caught. I mean, if you are publishing a book with a major publisher and it's out there for the public, that's actually very high visibility compared to if you do something in a classroom. But the thing is, if you keep doing it and you keep saying, oh, I got away with it this time, it's like, that's actually more fuel to convince you that you should keep doing it. And then that one time you get nailed, I mean, it can end your career. Absolutely. All right. I'm wondering, Kat, why do you think people do this? Like, is it laziness? Are you in art school and, oh, I ran out of time, I think I'll do this? Or I don't know. Like, I've never been able to understand what is the rationale for it.
I mean, I think it could be laziness. That's definitely a big aspect, but it could also maybe even be jealousy. Like, you see someone making such incredible work and you want that somehow. So what you do is just kind of present it in the classroom and just like parade it as your own. I've actually heard from my friend who went to a university in California that somebody plagiarized one of my paintings. Like, they took my kitchen painting, the one that I painted digitally, and they just printed it out and then presented it in class as their own. And my friend was like, I know the artist, and you definitely didn't do that. And also, your painting skills aren't at that level either. And I just think maybe that person just wanted to be able to have created a piece like that. I don't know. There are different aspects to this. What do you think, Clara? Why do you think people plagiarize?
I mean, other than the having no moral code part, I wonder if it's just people want a shortcut. They want to get to a certain place without having done the work, because let's face it, it's a ton of work to actually get to that point where you're doing something that maybe people are excited about and really having a reaction to, and you sort of think, oh, no one's going to catch me. I mean, my feeling about plagiarism, you ever watch a movie where somebody's clearly doing something really bad, like, oh, I'm going to sleep with her best friend and nobody, you're like, of course they're going to find out. Like, that's the whole point of the movie. That's how I feel about plagiarism. Is like, why would you do that? We have actually a comment from Neil that does explain why you might want to do plagiarism in some circumstances. Neil's confessing, my teacher used to have this comics assignment about science concepts. I was broke. So I said to my classmates that I'll make their comics for money. I ended up making comics for more than half my class. My mom was proud of what I did, but I won't do it again. Yikes. Neil. I mean, it can feel harmless in that situation, but it's something that can grow into something a lot bigger. And this whole thing about being blacklisted in the art community, that's not a small thing. I mean, Kat, what do you think about that? As far as you've seen, like how people interact in the art field with other professionals, is blacklisted really that bad, you think?
Yeah, it's horrible because word travels fast and the art community is small and tight-knit. I was once working with an art director and she was looking for an illustrator for a very specific assignment. And we came across the website of this certain artist who was like really, I don't know, not famous, but relatively well known in Canada. And we thought, oh, that's perfect. We're looking for someone. We're looking to source from Canada. And as we're going through the website, we're like, like all of these artworks are different from one another. It's really interesting because apparently only one person is making them. And as we're going through them, we're like, oh, this one kind of looks like Victor Nye. Like this one kind of looks like Yuko Shimizu. Like these are all really famous illustrators we know. Like why are they all on this one site of this one artist? And then we're like, okay, this seems too copied. Like it's not a straight up plagiarism kind of incident, but like the concepts, the style, and the composition seem too similar to a variety of illustrators that I don't think we're just not going to work with this artist because we don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to have, we don't want to be accused of plagiarism either. So what happened was that art director never reached out to that artist, but that art director also warned other people in the artist team about that artist. So word travels fast and you got to have those good relationships and you shouldn't plagiarize.
Well, and it goes both ways too, because when I work with somebody who's fabulous, I'll tell everybody, I'll say, Kat's amazing. She's great. Work with her. Like I will just like rant and rant and rant. If I get somebody who's terrible, I feel that it's my duty to warn other people. Like, yes, don't work with this person. They're a big pain. They're going to make your life really difficult. And so I think that that's not a small thing at all. Paula is saying, I know it's not plagiarism, but I hate when teachers make us only copy other artists' artwork as a learning technique. I tried doing something original and the teacher gave me an awful grade. Well, what do you think about that, Kat? Because there are certainly classrooms where people say, okay, we're going to practice painting this Rembrandt painting. Maybe it'll help us with techniques, but maybe there's a line there. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, sorry to hear that, Paula, first of all. But I do think that master copies are a really good way to learn technique and gain, I don't know, like pencil mileage, as Jordan likes to put it, like just experience working with that medium. But you cannot go so far as to claim that as your own, because ultimately it's practice to help you develop for your original artworks later. See, if you copy a Rembrandt portrait and then present it as your own, nobody will want to work with you again because you've just copied. But what you can do is sort of take that painting technique you've learned from copying Rembrandt and then make your own original painting. And then that is where master copies will really serve you. What is your take on this, Clara? What do you think about master copies and ownership?
I mean, I think master copies can be really helpful. I did a whole bunch. When I was in art school, I copied all these Velázquez paintings and I really felt like I started to understand the technique. But I knew the whole time I'm doing this to hone my technique. This is not anything but that. And so I think being able to separate what am I doing just as an exercise as opposed to something that I want to claim ownership over. That is very important to make that distinction. And I'm sorry to say, I have seen, especially in the art teacher Facebook groups, people will post projects and I'm like, what does that do for that artist? You're basically just asking them to do a Frida Kahlo self-portrait. I'm like, you're not going to learn anything from that. That's just not helpful for anybody. Aji Hay says, my art got stolen once online. The copycat didn't get any online traction or anything, but someone still messaged me online and was like, hey, this art looks like yours. So it's easy to find if you copy. Yep, I get messages like that all the time where people are like, "Hey, did you know?" And I'm like, oh, it's all over the place. It's very, very frustrating. All right, well, let's talk about a situation where somebody did not get caught. And this was when I was a student. This is a million years ago. This is in the 90s. I was a freshman in art school, and we had this project. I think it was called tension and compression. So it was this thing where you like took sticks and you stretched rubber bands, and you had to figure out some balance to the structure that the shape would actually hold itself together. But I think it was something like the sticks weren't allowed to touch. So it was a cool project. It was hard. It was not an easy thing to figure out. And so this student brings in something that looked a lot like this. It's not exactly like this, but it looked like this. And I just assumed it was her project. And she was very specific. Like she said, oh, yes, I took this material off the back of my backpack and I stretched. And she had a whole story for how it was constructed. And then later on, I was talking to some of the other students and they were like, oh, yeah, we all knew she bought that at the toy store. And I was like, what? I had no idea. I mean, maybe I was just clueless, but they all knew and nobody said a thing. I mean, Kat, what do you do? And because nobody wants to be the whistleblower a lot of the time. I don't know, like not cool. That and the teacher had no idea, no clue. So what do you do when something like that happens? Like everybody knows, nobody says anything.
Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment and that nobody wants to be the whistleblower. But the point of critique is to help someone. And if someone gets away with plagiarism, they're going to think, okay, plagiarism is good. And that means I can reap the benefits from this next time. But what if that next time is on a super public platform? What if that is the final nail to that person's coffin, basically? Like you want to warn that person that that might happen if you take this onto a grander scale. So yeah, no one wants to be the whistleblower. But in this case, I think it's really a mindset of like, you have to help the artist. And to help this artist, you have to tell them what's right and wrong. And it's wrong to buy a toy at the store and then just pass it off on your own.
And one thing that I tell a lot of students in art school is, listen, you're at art school to make mistakes. Make them here. Because if you make a mistake in art school, okay, yes, I would hope you have enough shame to be incredibly embarrassed about doing something like that. I know some people have no shame. But I say to students, if you fall on your face here, it's not a big fuss because it's in a pretty private situation. It's not on social media. And we've seen how stuff blows up on social media. It spreads like wildfire. And so I say to them, it's okay to mess up here, but learn the lesson now so you don't screw up later on. And we've seen how this stuff really catches up to people. And I don't know what ended up happening with this person, but it's terrible. I mean, maybe the way to do it is to speak to the teacher privately later on. Like you don't have to say it in front of the whole class, but just say, listen, I want you to know this was purchased. I feel like maybe that's the way to do it if you are afraid to make that statement. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that is a good way to do it. Yeah, definitely approach the professor later and then tell the professor then. Yeah, I think that's a good solution. Because I guess it is a lot of pressure to be in front of a whole classroom of students and then be the whistleblower, or like be in front of a whole classroom of students and then be caught as well. That will be a hurtful experience, but I think that will also inform you of what would come later if you go on a more public platform. But yeah, I think going to the professor later is a totally good solution.
And actually, we have some comments here, people talking about, well, maybe why? Why do people decide to plagiarize? So Neil is saying it's a combination of laziness, too much pressure to perform well. That's a really good point because there is so much pressure on people to be amazing when they're 18. I mean, Kat, I'm sorry to sound like an old fart, but your generation is so much more stressed out about getting ahead and getting the career going. I mean, I graduated art school. I was like, ooh, whatever. Like, I was not thinking about resumes or anything like that. I mean, do you see that with your generation? There is this pressure?
Oh, for sure, because social media exists and is a huge part of our lives, and people only want to post about the best about their lives on social media. So yeah, there's an incredible amount of pressure to post the very best. And if you're literally not at that level to be your best all the time, some people just turn to plagiarism. They take works that they see online that are good and pass it off on their own. I've seen that plenty of times with like people not from art school, people who are not as well versed in the arts. I've actually seen them post drawings that are just traces from other pictures. I'm like, okay, it doesn't really matter for you because you're a veterinarian. I don't think that you're gonna be blacklisted by art directors. Like, I don't think you matter that much. But yeah, there is this pressure for sure.
We have a comment from Masood who says, greetings from Iran. I absolutely love your channel. You won't believe the enormity of the inspiration your work gives me and a few art snob friends of mine. Bless you, Clara. Sure. Well, I'm glad we can contribute to your art snobbery. Thank you so much for watching. And here's another comment from Crystal Holmes who says, the challenge and thrill of not getting caught. Do you think that is that people are like, oh, I can't wait? Like, is it that fun? I don't know.
I mean, I haven't experienced it, so I don't know. But I can imagine that there is a thrill with getting away with theft. You know, once you steal something, actually, isn't that a whole thing? Like people, like terrible, it's awful, don't do it. But like people would post hauls online, like pictures of the amount of stuff that they've stolen, gotten away with. And it's not necessarily the stuff. It is the fact that they got away with it that keeps people going, keeps people wanting to steal more. And that might be a feeling people feel when they plagiarize. Like if they stole huge or really nice artwork and they got away with it and they're lauded as this wonderful artist, maybe they just want to feel that again. So maybe that's why they want to plagiarize again. So that's a really good point.
I don't know. I'd rather eat a big hunk of chocolate if I need to get like a thrill or something. That works for me every single time. Matthew is saying, when I was in college, I lost one of my works, which I worked really hard on. Later on, I found it in another class. I had a big fight with him, yet couldn't prove the work was mine, and he got away with it. Oh, I'm sorry. That really sucks. Yeah, and you know something? This is not plagiarism, but people do all kinds of things like that, because I was actually on a review board at a final critique at a school, and then I walked by a classroom and the student was in another board. It was the exact same work and it was for a different class. So he basically just took his projects and passed them off as being the work he did for every single class. And it's like, that's not plagiarism, but it's still pretty bad behavior because you're passing off projects that should have been done for another class. And I just feel like this is such bad experience to give yourself, because how are you going to survive professionally if you can't make the stuff? I mean, I just don't really understand why. Now, another thing, which I cannot believe people do this, people fake portfolios to get into art school. Did you ever hear about this, Kat?
Yeah, I hear whispers of it here and there, but I have never seen one for myself. They're kind of a legend to me. What about you, Clara? Have you seen them?
I have not technically confirmed a case, but I definitely have had situations where I was pretty sure. Like I had this one student in my class once who really could not do anything. And they were in my class for like 2 days or something. And so actually when we went in and looked at their admissions file and we saw the portfolio and I was like, there's no way this is the same kid. I don't know what happened technically. They ended up dropping my class. And so that was sort of the end of it. But actually, I have heard students who said to me, oh yeah, my art teacher did that for me. And I was like, what? Like there's this whole thing of like teachers doing the work for the students to get them into art school. And I'm like, that is like the most heinous crime you can commit as an art teacher. I mean, again, what are you thinking? Like you want the prestige of saying your student got into RISD? I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, that might be it, but it just like blows my mind people don't see the flip side of this. Like you are basically condemning that student to not do well in the school that they pay so much money to get into. Pay so much money and also spend so much time, years of their life to get into. That just like simply doesn't make sense to me.
Moses is saying, I feel art teachers in high school should teach students patience while making artwork. I think a lack of patience contributes to plagiarism. Do you think that's true, Kat?
Probably, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of factors to this, and I also agree with what Moses said in that it takes time to develop the skill set, and it takes time to make a piece that is quality. And you know what doesn't take time? Saving an image off internet and posting it.
Absolutely. I mean, I get it, you guys. We all want to make progress much faster than we usually can. But I don't know. I guess I see the frustration, but I'm like, is it really worth the danger of being blacklisted like that? I mean, not cool. Dara is saying, once I worked for someone who liked to right-click save Google Images, had me post them as logos and imagery for our stuff. I couldn't say no, but tried to explain it was wrong, but she didn't understand. So what do you do in that situation, Kat?
I mean, I'm glad, Darag, that you tried to explain to that person that it is wrong. And I'm sorry to hear that you were put in a position where you were kind of like bullied into doing this by someone of a higher position than you, of a person more empowered than you. I think that's tricky. And I think in this case, that person is really digging their own grave. And I think for you, the biggest point would be to protect yourself. Like, try not to associate yourself with that, or at least associate your name with that, and try your best to dissuade them. But if that doesn't work, try to avoid them. What do you think, Clara? What do you think the solution would be?
It's really hard because if you're being employed by that person, you're oftentimes not in the position to yell at them. On the other hand, you need the job. I don't think a lot of people would quit a job over something like that. But I think, Dara, what you did, which was voicing your opinion, that matters. Because I do think the more people hear, hey, that is not cool, maybe at some point they'll realize, hey, this is not okay for me to continually do this. Apollo Jake and Will says, using your work in more than one class was considered plagiarism in my university. Yeah, it's so hard because, every single school has a different series of academic probation, or sometimes they say, oh, you automatically fail the class, but it really, really varies from school to school. And actually, if you guys are interested in getting a really concrete definition of plagiarism, we do have a lawyer who's coming onto a stream mid-month who specializes working with artists. His name is Greg Kanan, and he's going to be doing like an Ask a Lawyer session where you guys can ask him anything about plagiarism. I think that's going to be a great stream to show up, so definitely check that out. All right, let's take a look. What?
Sorry, I'm like encouraging people to go to that stream because you don't normally get a chance to ask a lawyer anything you want. So definitely show up for that stream.
Lawyers are not cheap, you guys. It costs a lot to talk to them. Emily says, I once found an advertisement on a freelancer's job site that offered money to make an art portfolio. They weren't even offering a good wage. Well, speaking of this, I actually had companies contact me and say, oh, you reviewed these kids' portfolios. Can you write them a letter of recommendation for college? We'll give you all this money. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm like, do you know how unethical that is? Like, you're not allowed to charge students for letters of recommendation. It's just part of your job as a professor. I mean, hey, if I could get paid, wow, that's a lot of money for me. Like, some years I write like 40 letters of recommendation, but it's like, that's part of your job. And I just was disgusted. And I wrote them an email. I said, don't contact me again. This is unethical. So yes, you will definitely see things like that. And Catherine's saying there were two separate instances in a high school, competition winners painting directly from easy to find photos. Guess it was an easy way to win some cash. It's frustrating because you're like, yeah, you just copied it, right? Although, Kat, in the scheme of things, do these competitions really matter?
They don't really matter, but if you get caught plagiarizing, then your reputation will precede you. There's like such a huge blowback on this. Like, I don't get why people would do it.
Obviously, there are definitely reasons. So one other thing that has come up with plagiarism, especially because a lot of people are doing distance learning now with their schools, teachers are having major problems with students getting images off the internet, passing them in as their art homework. And I'm in a bunch of these art teacher Facebook groups, and there are so many posts every day like this one, where the teacher will write, this photo was submitted by a student. It seems way too polished to be created by a ninth grader. Has anybody seen this image before? And people reply, yep, it's from this website. And so for this particular piece, yep, it's from this website called Ma Petite Maison Verte. This kid just took it right off. I mean, I understand the impulse, but it just makes me so upset that students would do this and create so much extra work for teachers when they're already overwhelmed with remote learning. I mean, Kat, what's your take on this?
I feel like I would grade a student harsher if they did that, if they had me take the extra step to really understand the process, when they could have just like done something original. And it might like quote unquote suck, but it is 100 times better than copying and claiming someone else's work as your own. I mean, that's my opinion.
My feeling about teaching is that I just want students to try. I honestly don't really care if their color wheel looks really sloppy and who cares? They tried. They made an effort. That to me is priceless as far as teaching goes. I know everybody likes to emphasize the end product and, ooh, that drawing is so good. I mean, sure, that feels good. But I'll tell you, sometimes I'm more inspired by the students who lack the skill, but who are still really, really trying hard. I had this one student, this is like 15 years ago. He really was the least skilled student I had ever had. I mean, he really had a hard time with basic things. But I loved this kid because he showed up every day to class. He was always on time. He was the biggest chatterbox. And he never got upset that his projects didn't look good. He was just happy to be there. And I'm like, fabulous. I love that so much. And so we have this comment here from Lewis, who's saying, my university encouraged works in progress over completed pieces to avoid plagiarism. Yes, so that is something that teachers are now doing. They're having all these complicated instructions, which again creates more work for everybody else. Because when you teach online, now you have to say, okay, when you guys make your oil painting, take 2 works in progress photos and you need to send them to me to prove that they're your own. I mean, Kat, that just seems so unfair to like punish everybody else, make everybody else do more work just because one kid might be doing that, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. But I understand that the teachers are trying to find a workaround for this, and this is one way. And so whatever works, works.
Yeah, and so another thing that students are also being asked to do, instead of just passing in the painting, they're actually asking the students to pose in a photo next to the painting to prove that the painting is actually theirs. So this is a lot of extra work that people are bending over backwards to do. Michael is saying, I feel like those who plagiarize need to know that it takes no skill to plagiarize. There is no journey in artistic practice and the act of plagiarizing. Exactly. Like, Kat, to me, half the part about sculpting is just getting to sculpt, right? You tell me how much you like inking, right? What if you didn't have to ink anything? That'd be kind of a bummer, wouldn't it?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I love inking, so I would like to do that. I would like to experience that process. I will say that I guess this is sort of like a feeling of honor and satisfaction of being an artist and feeling these processes. But I would imagine if you're not a serious artist, like maybe your main profession is a veterinarian or something like that, I guess it's like super easy, yeah, to like plagiarize something and say, hey, look, like, yeah, I'm a veterinarian, but look at this painting I also did. I'm such an interesting person. Like that is such an easy way to pass something off as your own. But it's not honorable. And it just sucks. Like, why would you do something like that? Whether you're an artist or not.
Here's an interesting comment from Cerulean. They're saying it's too easy to do with the internet. I wonder if it's just the ease of it. It's a click to get all that work done. And I know teachers and students are frustrated with remote learning. Remote learning is driving everybody crazy. And so you sort of feel like, well, why would I want to put in that time and effort for something that is not really something I'm that into anyway? So it's very hard to resist that. And Lewis Hobbs is saying, my high school and university both use plagiarism checkers on text and images. There are places online you can buy a paper. Like you can hire somebody to write your English essay. And so it's a major issue. And I do really like this comment from Scott, who says, I feel like if this happens in a young grade, it's so important to nip it in the bud and explain why it's wrong and engage with them in addition to punishment. Yeah, I mean, the sooner people hear that message, the better, right? I mean, if you keep doing it and then all of a sudden you're not caught until college, I can't imagine that you've learned that lesson as well. I mean, you know, when you're a little kid and you get caught doing something, it's like the end of the world, right?
Yeah. Man, yeah. And also, like, being caught in college is certainly not a pleasant experience, but it's better than being caught like in the public on a wider platform. It's better than being caught in the world. Like, I don't know if anyone knows this, but a super famous musician, like the lead singer of the band Kiss, had a son who copied the manga Bleach and then published it, like had a publisher actually publish it and print copies. And then that person was caught. And I actually looked it up earlier today. That incident is still on that man's Wikipedia page. Like, it will never go away. No one's going to forget it. I'm like, oh, that really sucks for him. Like, that he got caught in such a public platform.
I don't know. He sort of made his bed. Now he has to lie in it. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. But I also wonder if no one told him it was wrong before. But
that's true. That maybe nobody said it. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not to blame because obviously he did it. But yeah, that could definitely be the case. Josh is saying, I think having students turn in progress photos during the middle of a project also gives teachers invaluable insight to the students' process, lets them give better advice on how to finish. And Lewis is saying, I love my progress photos as they can show unique aspects and building blocks. Yeah, what do you think about that, Kat?
Yeah, I totally agree. I love taking in progress photos of my own artwork personally. It's no big issue for me because I love seeing the process. And I've actually made GIFs of things going through the process and then becoming the final image. It's just very satisfying to know, yes, I did it. I accomplished it. This is proof. So, I mean, it could be bothersome for some people, and I'm not going to agree or disagree with anyone's opinion in that case. I just love doing it personally for my own growth and my own documentation.
Cynthia M. saying, I teach middle school remotely. I have them complete work in progress pictures too. It's a great way to check that they're actually being productive and a great way to check and give feedback. I totally agree. I mean, I love seeing in progress stuff. In fact, I've had a lot of teachers tell me they're trying to get every student to put a camera on themselves while they draw in class as if they're walking around watching. And I'm like, then you need every student to have a phone with a camera. They need a tripod. They need lighting. And I'm like, there's no chance you could get a class of 20 kids to do that. So what I've been telling teachers is, listen, instead of trying to watch the kids draw live, have them take work in progress photos. Because when you take a work in progress photo, oftentimes you can learn a lot about what a student is doing. I can just look at the underpainting and be like, oh yeah, you totally need to rethink how you're blocking in the shadows or something like that.
I feel like one huge reward to being a teacher is that you yourself are learning every single day too. Like, yes, you're the teacher, you're teaching, but you know, every day you walk into a class of like 10 or more or less people, and that is 10 or more or less people to learn from as well. So it's incredibly awesome to be a teacher. It's just that you just keep learning every day.
Oh, it's the best. It's like people don't realize. I feel like I'm a teacher for such selfish reasons because I just want to keep learning stuff. Tom G is saying, is following a tutorial on YouTube a kind of plagiarism, such as doing a Bob Ross painting, or is it kind of like doing a master copy? What do you think?
That's a good question, Tom. I think it really depends on the situation. If you create an image that's pretty similar to what Bob Ross just did, then that might, and you try to pass it off as your own, like zero Bob Ross, this is all me, then that is plagiarism. But if you take that painting technique that Bob Ross taught you and then made a nice painting of your cat or something with that technique, then that is your own. That is your own. You can't really copyright a style. And I know this is kind of a controversial topic, but there are a lot of things that go into a piece, like composition, technique, concept. And style isn't necessarily something that you can copyright. It's just how do you use that and how do you make that your own? I think that is what is most valuable in art, is how do you make a piece uniquely your own? What do you think, Clara?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the process. That's how you won't hit it out of the park right away, and it'll take you a long time to work through other people's styles. I mean, for the longest time when I started teaching, I didn't really feel like I had my own identity. I felt like I was a patchwork quilt. Like, oh, I totally stole that from this teacher and this teacher. And it really took me like a solid 5 years to feel like I was my own teacher. It's weird the way that that definitely happens. I really like this comment from C. Cantrell, who's saying COVID and online learning cannot be an excuse for plagiarizing and cheating. COVID can be an opportunity to learn how to live through and do difficult things. I think that's great. I think that's a really nice way to try to see the silver lining in what is a very difficult situation for everybody right now. We have an Art Prof Share today. Art Prof Share is when one of you guys creates an artwork in response to one of our videos. We love it when you guys do that. So we have an Art Prof Share today from Vivian Smith, who talks about doing this jelly print piece. And so Vivian explains in their statement, which is in the slide, they say a lot of the jelly print examples, they're just colorful abstract images, but she ended up watching my jelly plate printmaking tutorial where actually I ended up doing this subtractive technique, removing things with a cotton rag and using a paintbrush. And so Vivian used a lot of these techniques as well as a palette knife, a couple other rubber ceramic tools. And they also say, I really enjoyed Art Prof, not just because of the huge amount of information, but also because of the added social connection I've gained during this time of COVID. What do you think about this print, Kat?
Oh, I think it's awesome. I think Vivian did a really great job, especially with a mix of different techniques. Because when I was looking at this, I was like, yeah, I can definitely feel the different texture of I guess it's like a dandelion. I'm guessing it's a dandelion versus like the side foliage. Like these are two very different feelings. And I think the different textures were produced from different techniques. And I think Vivian applied them really well.
Yeah, and jelly plates, you guys, they're not easy to use. They can get really messy really fast. And I really enjoy, I guess, the harshness of the marks on the right. Like they really feel spiky and rigid. Like I would get hurt if I tried to touch it. And then on the left-hand side, there's this very like mushy, sort of soft quality to it. So I think, Vivian, you did a great job exploring the textures and really getting a nice range of contrast. So if you guys would like to be considered for an Art Prof Share, you can get a YouTube shout out during one of our videos. Just go to artprof.org, click on tutorials. There's a purple button that says submit your Art Prof Share. And this will take you to an Art Prof Share submission form, and you can put your stuff in there to be considered. And oh, I didn't even know Cerulean is actually Vivian Smith, whose work we just looked at. Very cool. So I'm really excited you could watch it live because it's just so cool when the artist is actually here with us. And lots of really nice comments. Seven Angelic says, love that texture. They're saying nicely done. Tom is saying beautiful. Lisa says nice texture. Yeah, so great job, you guys. And we love, as always, seeing what you make. You can also tag us on Instagram, art.prof. Use hashtag ArtProfShare, and we'll take a look at what you guys are making. We love sharing it in our stories. Art Prof has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And we hope you guys will hang out with me and Kat. We'll be in the Art Prof Discord in a few minutes, hanging out in the post live streams channel. If you're not in the Art Prof Discord, well, too bad. That's where all the cool kids hang out. So if you want to be cool, you should come hang out with us. And subscribe to our channel, join the Art Prof family. And thank you to our top Patreon supporters who make everything possible. Thank you to everybody for your really excellent comments, sharing your stories. You guys really enrich our dialogue here at Art Prof, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you